Captain Jake Morrison was drinking his morning coffee when the alarm started screaming across Luna Base 7. The Deep Space Monitoring Station had been quiet for months, tracking nothing more exciting than asteroid movements and solar flares. Jake rushed to the main control room where his crew was staring at their screens in complete shock. Lieutenant Amy Carter turned to face him with wide eyes. "Sir, we are getting a transmission from outside the solar system. It is not coming from any human source." Jake felt his coffee cup slip from his hands as he processed what she had just said. Humanity had been searching for alien life for decades, and now it seemed like alien life had found them first. The main screen flickered to life, showing a creature that looked nothing like anything from Earth. The alien had blue-gray skin, 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, and a mouth full of sharp teeth. When it spoke, the universal translator struggled to keep up with the strange language. "I am Admiral Kextar of the Zephyrian Empire," the alien said in a voice that sounded like grinding metal. "Your primitive species has been selected for conquest. You have 30 days to surrender your planet and submit to Zephyrian rule. Any resistance will result in the complete destruction of your world and every living thing on it." Jake watched in horror as the screen showed images of other planets. Beautiful worlds with blue oceans and green forests were reduced to burning wastelands in seconds. Massive alien ships fired beams of energy that cracked continents and boiled seas. Entire civilizations were wiped out like they had never existed at all. "We have conquered over 200 worlds," Admiral Kextar continued. "Your technology is centuries behind ours. Your weapons cannot harm our ships. Your shields cannot stop our attacks. Surrender now, and your species will be allowed to serve as slaves. Resist, and you will join the countless others who thought they could stand against the might of the Zephyrian Empire." The transmission ended, leaving the control room in complete silence. Jake stared at the empty screen, trying to process what he had just witnessed. Humanity was about to face an enemy that had destroyed hundreds of other civilizations. The aliens had given Earth 30 days to surrender or face total annihilation. "Send this recording to Earth immediately," Jake ordered. "Mark it as highest priority and route it directly to the President and the Joint Chiefs of Staff." Within minutes, the message was racing toward Earth at the speed of light. Jake knew that in a few hours, every leader on the planet would be watching the same terrifying images. On Earth, President Laura Bennett was in the middle of a budget meeting when her chief of staff burst into the Oval Office. "Madam President, you need to see this immediately," he said, his face pale with fear. The president watched the alien transmission 3 times before she could fully believe what she was seeing. Within hours, emergency meetings were taking place in every major capital on Earth. President Bennett spoke with Prime Minister John Davies of Britain, Chancellor Lisa Muller of Germany, and Premier Wang Li of China. For the first time in human history, every nation on Earth agreed on something. They would not surrender without a fight. General Ryan Clark was the first to speak at the emergency Pentagon meeting. "Our conventional weapons will not work against technology this advanced," he said, pointing to the images of alien ships. "Their shields can deflect nuclear weapons like they are small rocks. We need something completely different." Admiral Kate Sullivan nodded in agreement. "Our space fleet consists of 12 ships designed for exploration, not warfare. Even if we armed every satellite and space station, we would still be vastly outnumbered. The aliens claim to have over 10,000 warships." It was then that Dr. Alex Rodriguez spoke up from the back of the room. The scientist had been quiet during most of the meeting, but now he had everyone's attention. "There might be something we can do," he said slowly. For the past 15 years, a small team of researchers has been working on theoretical weapons based on quantum physics. We call it Project Prometheus. President Bennett leaned forward. "What kind of weapons?" she asked. "Weapons that can tear holes in space and time itself," Dr. Rodriguez replied. "The technology is completely untested and highly experimental. We have only built 3 prototype devices, and we are not even sure they will work. But if they do work, they might be able to bypass any kind of shielding the aliens have." The room erupted in conversation as military leaders and scientists began discussing the possibilities. Project Prometheus had been one of the most classified programs in human history, known only to a handful of people. Now it might be humanity's only hope for survival. As the meeting continued late into the night, radio telescopes around the world detected the approaching alien fleet. The massive ships were still far beyond the outer planets, but they were moving steadily toward Earth. The countdown had begun, and humanity had 29 days to prepare for the fight of their lives. News of the alien threat spread across the planet within hours. Panic gripped some cities, while others saw massive rallies of defiance. Millions of people volunteered for military service, even though most had no idea what they would be fighting against. Humanity had never faced extinction before, but they were determined to face it standing up. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains in Colorado, Colonel Sam Warren walked through corridors that most people did not know existed. Project Prometheus had been built inside an old nuclear bunker, expanded over 15 years into a research facility that rivaled anything on Earth. The project was so secret that even the president had only learned about it the day before. Dr. Maria Santos was waiting for him in the main laboratory, surrounded by equipment that looked more like science fiction than reality. She was the lead physicist on the Quantum Disruptor project, and one of only 12 people on Earth who understood how the weapons actually worked. "Show me what we have," Colonel Warren said, without wasting time on greetings. The fate of humanity might depend on what happened in this room over the next few weeks. Dr. Santos led him to a chamber where 3 metal devices sat on examination tables. Each device was about the size of a refrigerator, covered in cables and cooling systems. "These are quantum disruptors," she explained. "They work by creating tears in the fabric of space and time itself. When fired, they open a hole in reality that destroys anything caught inside it." Colonel Warren stared at the devices, trying to understand what he was looking at. "How much damage can they cause?" he asked. "We honestly do not know," Dr. Santos admitted. "Our computer simulations suggest that a single shot could destroy a ship the size of a city. But these weapons have never been tested in real conditions. We have only run small-scale experiments in laboratory settings. The weapons had been developed by accident during research into black hole formation. Scientists studying the collapse of massive stars had discovered that certain quantum fields could be manipulated to create tiny holes in space-time. What started as pure research had gradually evolved into a weapons program that nobody fully understood. The energy requirements are enormous," Dr. Santos continued, pointing to the massive power cables connected to each device. "Each weapon needs the output of a nuclear power plant to fire a single shot. After firing, the quantum core burns out, and the weapon becomes useless." Colonel Warren felt his hopes beginning to fade. "So we have 3 shots total, against a fleet of 10,000. Ships?" he asked. "Not exactly," Dr. Santos replied with a small smile. "We have 3 working prototypes, but we also have the blueprints and manufacturing equipment. If we can get enough resources and manpower, we might be able to build more weapons before the aliens arrive." Within hours, every major industrial facility on Earth received new orders. Auto factories stopped making cars and started producing quantum disruptor components. Electronics companies abandoned consumer products to focus on targeting systems. Even clothing factories were converted to manufacture the special materials needed for the weapons. Engineer Lucy Chen took charge of the rapid production program. She had helped design the original prototypes and knew every detail of their construction. Working 18 hours a day, she coordinated teams of workers who had no idea what they were building, but understood that human survival depended on their efforts. Lieutenant Commander Dan Foster was responsible for figuring out how to deploy the weapons in space. The quantum disruptors were too large and heavy for fighter aircraft, and they needed massive amounts of power that only the biggest ships could provide. The solution was to retrofit civilian vessels with military equipment, turning cargo ships, and passenger liners into improvised warships. The work proceeded at a frantic pace as the alien fleet continued its approach through the solar system. Telescopes tracked the massive ships as they passed Jupiter, their dark hulls blotting out the light from distant stars. Intelligence analysts estimated that the largest alien vessels were over 50 miles long, big enough to carry entire armies. Dr. Alex Rodriguez worked around the clock to understand more about the quantum physics behind the weapons. The original research had been based on theoretical mathematics that barely made sense even to trained physicists. Now he was trying to improve weapons that existed at the very edge of human scientific knowledge. The aliens use energy shields to protect their ships, he explained to a meeting of military planners. These shields work by deflecting or absorbing incoming attacks, but quantum disruptors do not actually attack the target. They remove the space that the target occupies, making it impossible for any kind of shield to provide protection. The implications were staggering. If the weapons worked as designed, they could destroy alien ships regardless of how advanced their defenses might be. But there were still enormous risks. Nobody knew what would happen if multiple quantum disruptors were fired at the same time, or what effect they might have on the fabric of space itself. As the days passed, more weapons rolled off the production lines. Each quantum disruptor required rare materials and precision manufacturing that pushed human technology to its absolute limits. Workers volunteered for double shifts, knowing that every hour of delay brought the alien fleet closer to Earth. The first test firing took place in empty space beyond the orbit of Mars. A single quantum disruptor was mounted on an unmanned probe and fired at an asteroid. The results were beyond anything the scientists had expected. The asteroid simply vanished, along with a sphere of space several miles in diameter. Where solid rock had existed moments before, there was now absolutely nothing. "It works, Doctor," Santos whispered as she watched the test results. "The weapon actually works, but even as production continued, troubling reports arrived from the outer solar system. The alien fleet had reached Saturn and was accelerating toward Earth. Their ships were larger and more numerous than initial estimates had suggested. Admiral Kextar commanded over 12,000 vessels, each one armed with weapons that could level cities. Colonel Warren stood in the main control room, watching displays that showed both human progress and alien advancement. Humanity was racing against time to build enough weapons to defend their world. The question was whether they would finish their preparations before the enemy arrived at Earth's doorstep. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood on the bridge of the battleship New Horizon, looking out at the strangest fleet in human history. 200 ships floated in formation at the edge of the asteroid belt, ranging from military destroyers to converted passenger liners. Each vessel had been hastily fitted with quantum disruptor weapons and whatever armor could be installed in the limited time available. The crew of the New Horizon was a mix of experienced naval officers and civilian volunteers who had learned to operate alien-killing weapons in just 2 weeks of training. Petty Officer Mike Torres had been a grocery store manager a month ago, and now he was responsible for targeting systems that could tear holes in space itself. "Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the approaching alien fleet. Communications," Officer Linda Hayes reported. "Admiral Kextar wants to speak with you directly." The main screen flickered to life, showing the alien commander on the bridge of his massive flagship. Behind him, Kate could see alien crew members preparing weapons that could destroy planets. Admiral Kextar looked at the human fleet with what might have been amusement. "I am impressed that your primitive species has managed to assemble any kind of resistance," the alien said in his grinding voice. "But this pathetic collection of ships cannot stand against the might of the Zephyrian Empire. I will give you one final chance to surrender before I destroy every vessel in your fleet." Captain Jake Morrison was commanding the destroyer Defiance, one of the smallest ships in the human formation. He had volunteered to speak for humanity, knowing that his words might be the last thing Earth ever broadcast to the galaxy. "This is our line in space," Jake said calmly. "Behind us is our home, our families, and everything we care about. We will not move backward. If you want to reach Earth, you will have to go through us." Admiral Kextar made a sound that might have been laughter. "Your bravery is admirable but pointless. I have destroyed civilizations far more advanced than yours. Your weapons cannot penetrate our shields, and your armor cannot stop our attacks. You are insects challenging a storm." The alien commander gestured to something off-screen, and the display changed to show the full Zephyrian fleet. Over 12,000 warships stretched across space in a formation that seemed to go on forever. The smallest alien vessels were larger than anything humanity had ever built, and their weapons glowed with energy that could burn continents. "Observe the fate of those who resist the Zephyrian Empire," Admiral Kextar said. The screen showed recordings of previous battles, where alien fleets had swept aside planetary defenses like they were made of paper. Entire worlds burned as the massive ships unleashed devastating attacks that left nothing behind but radioactive dust. But Jake Morrison was not intimidated by the display of power. "We have seen your movies before," he replied. "They show us exactly why we will never surrender. Every species that gave up without a fight ended up as slaves or corpses. At least we will die as free humans." The transmission ended, and both fleets prepared for battle. The human ships moved into defensive positions among the asteroids, using the rocky debris as cover and concealment. Admiral Sullivan had chosen the asteroid belt as humanity's defensive line because the chaotic environment would limit the aliens' advantage in numbers and firepower. Lieutenant Commander Dan Foster coordinated the final preparations from his position aboard the converted cruise ship Liberty Bell. The massive passenger vessel had been transformed into a weapons platform carrying 6 quantum disruptors, more firepower than any ship in human history. Former cruise director Nancy Price was now responsible for coordinating targeting data with the weapons systems. "All ships report ready for combat," she announced over the fleet communication system. "Quantum disruptors are charged and ready to fire. May God help us all." The Zephyrian fleet advanced in perfect formation, their ships moving through space like a dark tide of destruction. Admiral Kextar was confident that the battle would be over within minutes. His fleet had never lost a single engagement, and he saw no reason why this fight would be any different. As the alien ships approached the asteroid belt, they activated their energy shields and charged their weapons. The shields created shimmering barriers around each vessel that could deflect any known form of attack. Their weapons began to glow as they prepared to unleash enough firepower to shatter moons. Captain Lisa Wang commanded the cruiser Vanguard from a position deep within the asteroid field. Her ship carried 4 quantum disruptors and a crew of former mall security guards, retired teachers, and college students who had volunteered to defend their world. None of them had any real military experience, but they all understood that failure meant the death of everyone they loved. "Enemy fleet is crossing into the asteroid belt," Weapons Officer Tom Kelly reported. He had been a high school physics teacher before the crisis began, and now he was preparing to fire weapons that violated everything he had taught about the laws of physics. Admiral Sullivan watched from the new horizon as thousands of alien ships entered the defensive zone. The moment she had been waiting for was finally here. Humanity would either triumph against impossible odds or die trying. There was no middle ground and no second chances. "All ships," she broadcast on the fleet frequency. "This is Admiral Sullivan. You all know what is at stake today. Behind us is Earth, the only home our species has ever known. These aliens think we are primitive and weak. They think we will roll over and surrender like all the others before us. Today, we show them that humans do not go quietly into the night. The alien fleet continued its advance, supremely confident in their overwhelming superiority. Admiral Kextar had already begun planning the occupation of Earth, dividing the planet's resources among his subordinate commanders. In his mind, the battle was already over, but hidden among the asteroids, 200 human ships waited with weapons that could rewrite the laws of physics. The greatest battle in human history was about to begin. The moment the alien fleet crossed the defensive line, Admiral Kate Sullivan gave the order that would change galactic history forever. "All ships, fire at will," she commanded, and 200 quantum disruptors activated simultaneously across the human fleet. The effect was beyond anything the aliens could have imagined. Where mighty Zephyrian warships had been flying in perfect formation, spheres of absolute nothingness suddenly appeared. The quantum weapons did not destroy the alien vessels in any conventional sense. Instead, they simply removed the space that the ships occupied, creating holes in reality itself. Admiral Kextar watched in complete shock as the front lines of his fleet vanished without warning. Over 300 ships disappeared in the first few seconds of combat, including 2 of his heavy battlecruisers. The alien commander had seen many weapons during his centuries of conquest, but nothing that could make matter simply ceased to exist. "Shields have no effect," his weapons officer reported in a voice filled with panic. "The human weapons are bypassing our defenses completely. They are not attacking our ships. They are removing the space our ships occupy." Captain Jake Morrison fired the quantum disruptor aboard the Defiance, watching as an alien destroyer the size of a city block simply vanished from existence. The weapon created a sphere of empty space 3 miles in diameter, taking several smaller enemy vessels with it. Where moments before there had been metal and energy, now there was absolutely nothing. The Zephyrian fleet tried to respond with their own weapons, firing massive energy beams at the human ships. But the humans had learned from studying alien tactics, and they used the asteroids as cover while firing their quantum weapons from concealment. The alien attacks smashed through rocky debris but found empty space where the human ships had been moments before. Lieutenant Commander Dan Foster coordinated the attack from the Liberty Bell, watching as the converted cruise ship's 6 quantum disruptors tore enormous holes in the enemy formation. Former cruise passengers who were now weapons operators worked with deadly efficiency, targeting the largest alien vessels first. "Direct hit on enemy flagship-class vessel," reported Nancy Price, who had traded her hospitality uniform for military gear. "Target has been completely eliminated along with its escort squadron." The battle was turning into a nightmare for the Zephyrian Empire. Ships that had conquered hundreds of worlds were being destroyed by converted civilian vessels operated by grocery clerks and schoolteachers. Admiral Kextar's perfect formation was collapsing as his commanders tried to understand how primitive humans had developed weapons that seemed to violate the basic laws of physics. Dr. Alex Rodriguez monitored the battle from Earth, watching as his theoretical weapons performed beyond every computer simulation. The quantum disruptors were not just destroying individual ships, they were creating gravitational anomalies that affected nearby vessels. Some alien ships were being pulled into the holes in space-time, stretched and torn apart by forces that no shield could resist. "The quantum fields are interacting with each other," he reported to the command center. "Multiple disruptors firing in the same area are creating cascade effects that amplify the destruction." Captain Lisa Wang commanded the Vanguard as it emerged. From behind a large asteroid to fire at point-blank range into a group of alien cruisers, the 4 quantum disruptors aboard her ship fired in rapid sequence, creating overlapping spheres of nothingness that consumed an entire enemy squadron. Physics. Teacher Tom Kelly was almost laughing as he operated the weapon systems. "I spent 20 years teaching students that you cannot destroy matter, only change its form," he said over the ship's communication system. "I guess I was wrong about that." The Zephyrian fleet tried to retreat, but the quantum weapons had created Distortions in space-time that made faster-than-light travel impossible in the battle zone. Ships that tried to engage their hyperdrive systems found themselves caught in gravitational whirlpools that crushed their hulls like paper. Admiral Kextar realized that his fleet was trapped in a killing field with an enemy that possessed weapons beyond his understanding. For the first time in his military career, he was facing defeat at the hands of what he had considered a primitive species. "Send a distress signal to the home fleet," he ordered his communications officer. "Tell them that Earth possesses weapons that can manipulate space and time itself. Warn them not to approach this system." But the human fleet was not finished with their attack. Admiral Sullivan had studied the alien formation carefully, and she knew exactly where to strike next. The enemy command ships were clustered in the center of their fleet, protected by layers of smaller vessels that were now being systematically eliminated. The converted passenger liner Star of Freedom emerged from the asteroid field with 8 quantum disruptors charging for simultaneous firing. Captain Roy Barnes, a former airline pilot, guided his ship toward the enemy flagship, while his crew of volunteer civilians prepared to fire the largest coordinated quantum attack in human history. "Target the alien command vessel," he ordered. "If we can take out their leader, the rest of their fleet might surrender." The 8 quantum disruptors fired as one, creating a massive distortion in space-time that consumed not only Admiral Kextar's flagship, but also the dozen escort ships surrounding it. The alien commander, who had boasted about conquering 200 worlds, vanished into nothingness, along with his entire command staff. The remaining Zephyrian ships began to break formation as panic spread through their ranks. Captains who had never experienced defeat found themselves facing an enemy that could erase their vessels from existence without warning. Some ships tried to surrender, broadcasting messages of submission on all frequencies. But the human fleet was not interested in taking prisoners. Every alien ship represented a threat to Earth, and Admiral Sullivan was determined to eliminate that threat completely. The quantum disruptors continued firing, creating an expanding field of gravitational chaos that made escape impossible for the surviving enemy vessels. Colonel Sam Warren watched the battle from the command center beneath the Colorado Mountains, amazed at how effectively the weapons were performing. "We estimated that each quantum disruptor could destroy one large ship," he reported to President Bennett. "Instead, they are eliminating entire squadrons with each shot." The battle that Admiral Kextar had expected to win in minutes was turning into the greatest military disaster in Zephyrian history. Over half of his fleet had been destroyed in less than an hour, and the survivors were trapped in a region of space where the normal laws of physics no longer applied. The battle continued for 3 more hours as the human fleet systematically destroyed what remained of the once mighty Zephyrian Armada. Admiral Kate Sullivan coordinated the attack from the New Horizon, directing her ships to hunt down the surviving alien vessels that were scattered throughout the asteroid belt. With Admiral Kextar dead and his flagship destroyed, the Zephyrian fleet had lost all central command. Individual ship captains tried to organize their own escapes, but the quantum weapons had created so many distortions in space-time that normal navigation was impossible. Ships that attempted to flee found themselves pulled back into the battle, zoned by gravitational anomalies. Captain Jake Morrison guided the Defiance through the wreckage of alien vessels, searching for any ships that might still pose a threat. The destroyer's quantum disruptor had fired 12 times during the battle, and each shot had eliminated multiple enemy targets. The crew was exhausted, but determined to finish the job. "Another group of alien ships detected behind the large asteroid cluster," reported Lieutenant Amy Carter. "They appear to be trying to hide from our sensors." Jake smiled grimly as he ordered his ship toward the hidden enemies. "Take us in close. Let them know that there is nowhere to hide from Earth's defenders." The Defiance emerged from behind the asteroids to find 6 Zephyrian cruisers attempting to repair their damaged hyperdrive systems. The alien ships opened fire immediately, but their energy weapons harmlessly struck the rocky debris that the human destroyer was using for cover. "Return fire," Jake ordered, and the quantum disruptor created another sphere of nothingness that consumed 3 of the alien vessels instantly. The remaining ships tried to surrender, broadcasting pleas for mercy in dozens of different languages. But Jake had seen the recordings of what these aliens did to conquered worlds. "No mercy for those who would destroy Earth," he said quietly, and ordered his weapons officer to fire again. Throughout the battle zone, similar scenes were playing out as human ships cornered the remaining alien vessels. The converted cruise ship Liberty Bell had become one of the most effective hunters, using its multiple quantum disruptors to eliminate entire squadrons of fleeing enemies. Lieutenant Commander Dan Foster coordinated the final sweep from his position, aboard the massive vessel. "Sensors show less than 200 alien ships remaining," he reported to Admiral Sullivan. "Most of them appear to be damaged and unable to fight effectively." Former cruise director Nancy Price had become expert at operating the quantum targeting systems during the battle. "We have a group of 20 enemy vessels attempting to reach the edge of the distortion field," she announced, "moving to intercept." The Liberty Bell accelerated toward the fleeing aliens, its 6 quantum disruptors charging for another coordinated attack. The Zephyrian ships detected the approaching threat and tried to increase speed, but their damaged engines could not provide enough power to escape. "Fire all weapons," Dan ordered, and 6 spheres of nothingness appeared among the fleeing ships. When the quantum distortions cleared, empty space remained where the alien squadron had been trying to escape. Back on Earth, Dr. Alex Rodriguez was monitoring the quantum field effects created by the battle. The repeated use of so many disruptor weapons had created a region of space where the normal laws of physics were severely distorted. Ships entering the area experienced strange gravitational effects and temporal anomalies that made navigation extremely difficult. "The quantum cascade is stabilizing," he reported to the command center. "But it will take several weeks for space-time to return to normal in the battle zone. Any alien ship still in the area will remain trapped until the distortions fade." President Laura Bennett watched the battle reports with amazement and relief. Humanity had faced extinction and instead achieved the most decisive military victory in their history. The alien fleet that had conquered 200 worlds had been completely destroyed by converted civilian ships operated by volunteer crews. "How? Many of their ships escaped?" she asked General Ryan Clark. "Current estimates suggest that fewer than 100 Zephyrian vessels managed to flee the battle zone," the general replied. "Out of an original fleet of over 12,000 ships, that represents a survival rate of less than 1%. The few surviving alien ships that had escaped the quantum distortions were racing back toward Zephyrian space, carrying news of their impossible defeat." Captain Vexmore commanded one of the fleeing vessels, still struggling to understand how his supposedly invincible fleet had been destroyed by primitive humans. "Prepare a message for the Zephyrian High Command," he ordered, his communications officer. "Tell them that Earth possesses weapons beyond our understanding. Recommend that all Zephyrian forces avoid human space until we can develop countermeasures." But even as the surviving aliens fled toward their home territory, human ships were pursuing them. Captain Lisa Wang commanded the Vanguard as it chased a group of damaged enemy cruisers through the outer solar system. The quantum disruptors aboard her ship had unlimited range, and she was determined that no alien vessel would escape to threaten Earth again. "Target the lead ship," she ordered Weapons Officer Tom Kelly. The former physics teacher had become one of the most accurate quantum disruptor operators in the human fleet, able to hit targets at distances that seemed impossible. "Direct hit," Tom reported as another alien ship vanished from existence. 2 more enemy vessels remain in this group. The hunt continued for hours as human ships tracked down the last fleeing aliens. Admiral Sullivan had given orders that no Zephyrian vessel was to be allowed to escape with intelligence about Earth's defenses. The quantum disruptor technology had to remain secret until humanity could prepare for the inevitable alien retaliation. As the sun set over Earth, The last Zephyrian ship was destroyed near the orbit of Neptune. The alien armada that had come to conquer humanity had been completely eliminated, with only a handful of vessels managing to escape back to their home territory. Colonel Sam Warren stood in the command center beneath the Colorado mountains, looking at displays that showed empty space where the enemy fleet had been. "It is finished," he announced to the room full of exhausted scientists and military officers. "The alien threat has been eliminated." But even as humanity celebrated their victory, everyone knew that this was only the beginning. The Zephyrian Empire would eventually learn about their defeat and send even larger fleets to avenge their fallen comrades. Earth had won the first battle, but the war for human survival was just getting started. 3 days after the Great Battle, salvage crews were working throughout the asteroid belt to recover alien technology from the wreckage. Colonel Sam Warren led the largest recovery operation from aboard the research vessel Discovery, which had been hastily converted from a deep space mining ship into a mobile laboratory. The quantum weapons had not left much intact alien technology behind, but the few ships that had been caught on the edges of the distortion fields contained valuable information about Zephyrian capabilities. Dr. Maria Santos supervised teams of scientists as they carefully examined alien computer systems and weapons. "Technology? Their energy shields operate on principles we barely understand," she reported to Colonel Warren. "But their computer systems are surprisingly primitive. It appears that the Zephyrian Empire relies more on brute force than advanced technology." The discovery was shocking to human scientists who had assumed that any spacefaring civilization must be highly advanced. Instead, the aliens seemed to have achieved galactic dominance through overwhelming numbers and superior firepower rather than technological sophistication. Captain Jake Morrison was commanding a boarding party aboard, a damaged Zephyrian cruiser that had been disabled rather than destroyed. The alien ship was over 2 miles long, large enough to carry thousands of crew members and enough weapons to level a city. But walking through its corridors, Jake was surprised by what he found. "The ship design is incredibly inefficient," he reported over his radio. "Huge amounts of space are wasted on ceremonial areas and luxury quarters for senior officers. Their weapons are powerful but crude, and their life support systems are barely adequate for the crew size." Engineer Lucy Chen was examining the alien hyperdrive systems, trying to understand how the massive ships traveled between star systems. "Their faster-than-light technology is actually less advanced than our theoretical models," she announced with surprise. "They achieve interstellar travel through raw power rather than elegant engineering." The boarding parties also discovered something even more disturbing than alien technology. In the lower levels of several ships, they found prison areas containing members of other alien species. These were the survivors of worlds that the Zephyrian Empire had conquered, kept as slaves to operate the ships and maintain the equipment. Dr. Alex Rodriguez interviewed one of the rescued prisoners, a being that looked somewhat like a large insect with multiple arms and compound eyes. The universal translator struggled with the alien's language, but the story that emerged was both heartbreaking and revealing. "My people were conquered 50 years ago," the insect-like alien explained. "The Zephyrians destroyed our cities and enslaved our population. We are forced to work in their ships, maintaining systems that we understand better than they do." The revelation that the Zephyrian Empire was built on slave labor rather than advanced technology changed everything humans thought they knew about their enemies. The supposedly superior aliens were actually dependent on the conquered species to operate their own ships and weapons. President Laura Bennett convened an emergency meeting with world leaders to discuss the implications of these discoveries. Prime Minister John Davies of Britain joined the video conference from London, while Chancellor Lisa Muller participated from Berlin. For the first time since the crisis began, the mood was optimistic rather than desperate. "The alien empire is not as strong as we initially believed," President Bennett announced. Their ships are powerful but poorly designed, and they rely heavily on slave labor from conquered species. This suggests that their empire might be more fragile than it appears. Admiral Kate Sullivan was leading efforts to analyze the tactical information recovered from alien computer systems. The data revealed the locations of Zephyrian bases, supply routes, and even the home worlds of the Empire. More importantly, it showed that the aliens had never faced serious resistance from any conquered species. Every world they attacked surrendered within days or was completely destroyed, she reported to the Military Planning Committee. They have no experience fighting an enemy that can match their firepower. Their tactics are designed for overwhelming weaker opponents, not for facing equal or superior forces. The strategic implications were enormous. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered 200 worlds through intimidation and brute force, but they had never developed the sophisticated military doctrine needed to fight a real war. Their commanders were accustomed to easy victories against helpless enemies. Meanwhile, the rescued alien slaves were providing valuable intelligence about the internal structure of the Zephyrian Empire. Species after species had been conquered and enslaved, forced to work in mines, factories, and shipyards throughout alien space. But many of these enslaved populations harbored deep resentment against their masters. The Empire is held together by fear rather than loyalty, explained another rescued prisoner, a being that resembled a large bird with metallic feathers. If the conquered species believed they had a chance at freedom, many would rise in rebellion against the Zephyrians. Dr. Rodriguez began developing plans to communicate with the enslaved populations throughout alien space. The quantum communication technology developed for the disruptor weapons could be modified to send messages across interstellar distances instantly, bypassing the normal limitations of faster-than-light travel. We could coordinate simultaneous uprisings across the entire Zephyrian Empire, he proposed to the military leadership. While they are dealing with rebellions on hundreds of worlds, they would not be able to mount another attack against Earth. But, first, humanity needed to prepare for the inevitable retaliation. The few Zephyrian ships that had escaped the battle would eventually reach their home territory and report the destruction of Admiral Kextar's fleet. The alien leadership would not allow such a defeat to go unanswered. Colonel Warren supervised. The rapid construction of new quantum disruptor weapons using technology recovered from the alien ships. The Zephyrian power systems were crude but extremely powerful, providing enough energy to operate multiple disruptors on a single vessel. We can build ships that are smaller but more heavily armed than anything in the alien fleet, he reported to Admiral Sullivan. Combined with our superior tactics and the element of surprise, we should be able to defeat much larger enemy forces. The human fleet was already expanding as more civilian ships were converted into warships. Cargo vessels, passenger liners, and even space stations were being fitted with quantum weapons and sent to patrol the outer solar system. Within weeks, Earth would have a fleet of over 1,000 ships, each capable of destroying vessels many times their size. But the most important discovery was yet to come. Deep in the computer systems of the alien flagship, human analysts found detailed records of every world the Zephyrian Empire had conquered. The files contained population data, resource inventories, and military assessments that painted a complete picture of alien-controlled space. There are over 50 billion enslaved beings throughout the Zephyrian Empire, announced Intelligence Officer Carol Wright during a briefing at the Pentagon. Many of these species have technological capabilities that rival or exceed our own. If we could coordinate their liberation, we would have allies throughout the galaxy. The war that had begun with humanity facing extinction was rapidly evolving into something much larger. Earth had not only survived the alien attack, but had also discovered the weakness at the heart of the Zephyrian Empire. The galaxy's most feared conquerors were about to face their greatest challenge from the very species they had enslaved. 6 months after the destruction of Admiral Kextar's fleet, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the new battleship Liberator as it approached the Kepler system. This was humanity's first offensive operation beyond the solar system, and the target was a Zephyrian slave colony where over 10 million beings were forced to mine rare minerals for the alien empire. The human fleet had grown to over 1,500 ships, each equipped with improved quantum disruptor weapons and powered by hybrid human-alien technology. The Liberator itself was a marvel of engineering, combining human innovation with Zephyrian power systems to create the most advanced warship ever built. Long-range sensors detect 12 Zephyrian vessels in orbit around Kepler-4, reported Lieutenant Amy Carter, who had been promoted after her performance during the initial alien contact. They appeared to be standard patrol cruisers with no heavy weapons. Jake smiled as he studied the tactical display. The aliens had never imagined that humans would take the war to them, and their defenses were designed to prevent slave uprisings rather than resist military invasion. Signal the fleet to prepare for quantum disruptor attack. We go in fast and hit them hard before they can call for reinforcements. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, catching the Zephyrian patrol ships completely by surprise. The alien vessels had barely begun to raise their shields when 15 quantum disruptors fired simultaneously, creating overlapping spheres of nothingness that consumed the entire enemy squadron in seconds. All alien ships destroyed, announced Weapons Officer Mike Torres, who had become one of the most experienced quantum disruptor operators in the human fleet. No enemy vessels escaped to report our presence. With the orbital defenses eliminated, the real mission could begin. The Liberator descended toward the planet's surface, followed by a dozen landing ships filled with human marines and liberated alien allies. Dr. Alex Rodriguez had developed a translation system that could communicate with any species they encountered, making it possible to coordinate the liberation of enslaved populations. Colonel Sam Warren led the ground assault team as they landed near the largest mining complex on the planet. The facility covered hundreds of square miles and contained processing equipment that could extract valuable minerals from the planet's crust. More importantly, it housed over 2 million enslaved beings from dozens of different species. Remember, our primary mission is liberation, not conquest, Colonel Warren reminded his troops over the radio. We are here to free the slaves and destroy the alien infrastructure, not to occupy the planet. The human marines advanced through the mining complex, encountering minimal resistance from the Zephyrian guards. Most of the alien overseers fled when they realized they were facing the same humans who had destroyed Admiral Kekstar's fleet. Those who chose to fight were quickly eliminated by human weapons. Engineer Lucy Chen supervised teams that were disabling the mining equipment and destroying the facilities that supported the slave operation. The aliens have been strip mining this planet for over 30 years, she reported. The environmental damage is severe, but the enslaved population has managed to preserve some of their original technology. The rescued slaves represented 15 different species, each with unique capabilities and knowledge. Some were excellent engineers who had been forced to maintain Zephyrian equipment, while others were skilled pilots who knew the locations of hidden rebel bases throughout the galaxy. Dr. Maria Santos worked with the liberated scientists to understand the full extent of Zephyrian operations in the region. This mining operation supplies raw materials for ship construction at 3 major alien shipyards, she discovered. If we can destroy those facilities, we can severely limit their ability to build new fleets. The information was transmitted back to Earth, where Admiral Kate Sullivan was coordinating the expanding liberation campaign. Human fleets were operating in 6 different star systems, striking at Zephyrian installations while making contact with enslaved populations. Aliens are starting to respond to our attacks, she reported during a video conference with President Laura Bennett. They have recalled several fleets from frontier regions to defend their core territories, but their response is uncoordinated and reactive rather than strategic. The Zephyrian Empire was struggling to deal with the unprecedented threat posed by human forces. For centuries, they had faced only weak resistance from primitive species that could be easily crushed. Now they were fighting an enemy that possessed superior weapons and tactical doctrine, supported by growing networks of liberated allies. Captain Lisa Wang commanded a task force that was operating near the Vega system, coordinating attacks with local rebel groups that had been fighting Zephyrian occupation for decades. The rebels had survived by hiding in asteroid belts and abandoned space stations, emerging only to strike at vulnerable targets. The rebel fleet consists of over 200 ships, she reported to the human command structure. Most are small, vessels armed with salvaged weapons, but they know Zephyrian patrol routes and can guide our forces to high-value targets. The joint human-rebel operations were proving devastatingly effective against alien forces. Human quantum disruptors could eliminate the heavily armed Zephyrian warships, while rebel fighters used their superior knowledge of local space to outmaneuver enemy patrols and strike at supply convoys. Meanwhile, back in the Kepler system, Colonel Warren was organizing the evacuation of liberated slaves who wanted to join the resistance movement. Many of the rescued beings possessed technical skills that could be invaluable to the human war effort, while others provided intelligence about Zephyrian operations throughout the galaxy. We have identified over 50 target systems where large slave populations could be liberated, announced Intelligence Officer Carol Wright during a strategy meeting aboard the Liberator. Each successful liberation operation provides us with more allies and reduces Zephyrian industrial capacity. But the most significant development was the discovery of a hidden rebel base in the Proxima Centauri system, less than 5 light-years from Earth. The base had been established by escaped slaves from over a dozen different species, and they had been planning their own liberation campaign for years. Commander Zixal was the leader of the multi-species Rebel Alliance, a being that resembled a large crystalline structure with multiple sensory organs. When human diplomats made contact with the rebel base, they discovered that the aliens had been monitoring Earth's radio transmissions for decades. "We knew that your species existed, but we believed you were too primitive to pose a threat to the Zephyrian Empire," Commander Zixal explained through the Universal Translator. "When we detected the destruction of Admiral Kextar's fleet, we realized that everything had changed. The Rebel Alliance possessed detailed intelligence about Zephyrian military operations, including the locations of major fleets and the schedule for planned attacks on other star systems. More importantly, they had been developing their own advanced weapons technology using salvaged alien equipment. We have been working on improved shield systems and more efficient faster-than-light drives," explained the Rebel chief scientist, a being that looked like a large plant with multiple thinking nodes. "Combined with your quantum disruptor technology, we could build ships capable of striking at the heart of the Zephyrian Empire." Dr. Rodriguez began working with rebel scientists to integrate human and alien technologies into hybrid weapons systems. The combination of human innovation, Zephyrian power technology, and rebel engineering expertise was producing results that exceeded anything any single species could achieve alone. "We are not just fighting a war of liberation," President Bennett announced in a broadcast to the galaxy. "We are building a new alliance of free species that will ensure no civilization ever faces conquest and enslavement again." The message was transmitted on frequencies that could reach every corner of Zephyrian space, coordinated with simultaneous uprisings on dozens of enslaved worlds. The galaxy's most feared empire was beginning to crumble as their slaves turned against them with weapons and allies they had never expected to face. 1 year after the first alien invasion of Earth, Admiral Kate Sullivan commanded the largest fleet in galactic history as it approached the Zephyrian home system. Over 5,000 ships from 23 different liberated species moved in, perfect formation toward the planet where the alien empire had ruled the galaxy for over 1,000 years. The human contingent included 800 vessels, ranging from the massive battleship New Horizon to converted civilian ships that had proven their worth in dozens of liberation campaigns. Each ship was equipped with the latest quantum disruptor weapons and hybrid technology that combined the best innovations from all Alliance species. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Liberator, now serving as Admiral Sullivan's flagship for the final assault. The ship had been upgraded with crystalline shield technology from the Proxima rebels and Vegan sensor systems that could detect cloaked enemy vessels. It represented the pinnacle of Alliance engineering and cooperation. Long-range sensors detect the Zephyrian home fleet, reported Lieutenant Amy Carter, who had become one of the most experienced officers in the Alliance Navy. Over 3,000 ships are defending the system, including their most advanced battleships and the Emperor's personal dreadnought. The Zephyrian Empire had recalled every available warship to defend their home world, stripping defenses from frontier systems and abandoning dozens of enslaved colonies. Emperor Vaxmore himself commanded the defense fleet from his massive flagship, a vessel over 100 miles long that carried enough firepower to destroy moons. "Open a communication channel to the enemy fleet," Admiral Sullivan ordered. "It is time to give them a chance to surrender before we destroy their empire forever." The main screen showed Emperor Vaxmore on the bridge of his dreadnought, surrounded by alien advisors and military commanders. The Zephyrian ruler was larger than the other members of his species, with additional arms and enhanced sensory organs that marked him as genetically superior according to alien standards. "So the primitive humans have finally come to die at the heart of our empire," the Emperor said in his grinding voice. "You have caused considerable inconvenience with your rebellion, but now you face the full might of the Zephyrian fleet. Surrender now, and I will allow your species to survive as slaves." Admiral Sullivan smiled as she faced the alien ruler who had ordered the destruction of so many worlds. "Emperor Vaxmore, I am Admiral Kate Sullivan of the Galactic Liberation Alliance. Your empire of slavery and conquest ends today. Surrender your forces, and you will be given a fair trial for your crimes against the galaxy." The alien emperor made a sound that might have been laughter. "You face 3,000 of our most advanced warships with your collection of primitive vessels and stolen technology. My fleet has never known defeat, and it will not start today." The communication ended as both fleets prepared for the battle that would determine the future of the galaxy. The Zephyrian ships moved into a defensive formation around their home world, using the planet's orbital stations and moon bases to create overlapping fields of fire that could destroy any attacking fleet. But the Alliance had learned much during their Year of Liberation campaigns. Commander Zixal of the Proxima Rebels coordinated the multi-species attack plan from his crystalline command ship, while rebel pilots who knew Zephyrian tactics guided strike groups toward weak points in the enemy formation. "All ships, execute Liberation Protocol 7, Admiral Sullivan commanded, and the Alliance fleet split into dozens of smaller groups that attacked from every direction simultaneously. The Zephyrian defenders opened fire with massive energy weapons that had destroyed countless worlds, but the Alliance ships were protected by advanced shields and moved with a coordination that the aliens had never encountered. Quantum disruptors began firing throughout the battle zone, creating spheres of nothingness that consumed enemy vessels by the dozens. Captain Lisa Wang led a squadron of human and Vegan ships in a direct assault on the Emperor's dreadnought. The massive alien vessel was protected by shields that could deflect nuclear weapons, but quantum disruptors ignored conventional defenses completely. "Target the enemy flagship," she ordered her weapons officer. "Time to show the Emperor what happens to those who threaten Earth." 6 quantum disruptors fired simultaneously at the alien dreadnought, creating overlapping distortions in space-time that began tearing the massive ship apart. Emperor Vaxmore watched in horror as his invincible flagship was consumed by weapons that violated every law of physics he understood. Throughout the battle zone, Alliance ships were systematically destroying the Zephyrian fleet using tactics and technology that the aliens could not counter. Rebel fighters who had been enslaved for decades struck back at their former masters with weapons powered by human innovation and alien engineering. Dr. Alex Rodriguez monitored the quantum field effects from the Alliance command ship, ensuring that the massive deployment of disruptor weapons did not create dangerous instabilities in space-time. "Quantum cascade is stable," he reported. "We can maintain this level of firepower indefinitely." The battle raged for 6 hours as 3,000 Zephyrian ships were systematically eliminated by the Alliance fleet. The alien defenders fought with desperate courage, but their weapons and tactics were designed for conquering helpless victims, not fighting an enemy that matched their firepower and exceeded their strategic thinking. Colonel Sam Warren led boarding parties onto the few Zephyrian ships that had been disabled rather than destroyed, searching for intelligence about other alien strongholds and liberating any slaves found in the ship's lower levels. "Emperor Vaxmore is confirmed dead," he reported over the fleet communication system. "The alien leadership has been eliminated." As the last Zephyrian warship was destroyed, Admiral Sullivan broadcast a message that was transmitted throughout the galaxy on all frequencies. "This is Admiral Kate Sullivan of the Galactic Liberation Alliance. The Zephyrian Empire has fallen. All enslaved beings throughout the galaxy are hereby declared free. Any former Zephyrian officials who surrender peacefully will be given fair trials, while those who continue to resist will face the combined might of the liberated species." The message reached thousands of worlds where enslaved populations rose, in simultaneous rebellion against their weakened Zephyrian overlords. Without their home fleet and central command structure, the alien empire collapsed within days as species after species declared their independence. Captain Jake Morrison led the occupation forces that secured the Zephyrian home world, ensuring that the planet's population was treated humanely despite the crimes their empire had committed. "We are liberators, not conquerors," he reminded his troops. "Our goal is justice, not revenge." President Laura Bennett addressed the galaxy from the former Emperor's palace, announcing the formation of the Galactic Republic based on principles of freedom, democracy, and cooperation between species. Representatives from over 200 worlds attended the founding ceremony, including many species that had been enslaved for centuries. "Today marks the beginning of a new age for the galaxy," she declared. "Never again will any species face conquest and enslavement. The era of empires built on oppression has ended forever." Dr. Maria Santos established research stations throughout former Zephyrian space, working with scientists from dozens of species to develop new technologies that would benefit all members of the Galactic Republic. The quantum disruptor weapons were shared freely with any species that pledged to use them only for defense. The galaxy that had trembled before the might of the Zephyrian Empire was now protected by the combined fleets of the Galactic Republic. Human ships patrolled alongside vessels from liberated worlds, ensuring that no new empire could arise to threaten the freedom that so many had fought to achieve. Admiral Sullivan stood in the command center of the New Horizon as it orbited the former Zephyrian capital, watching ships from dozens of species working together to build a better future. The war that had begun with humanity facing extinction had ended with the liberation of the entire galaxy and the birth of a new age of cooperation and peace.